it's interesting. Like in basketball, if you see a talent, you're like, okay, that kid's a talent, and then he just needs coaching and everything. In football, we see this talent, and then it's so weird. We talk ourselves out of it. And like when you see Justin Herbert at Oregon, and you're like at the Rose Bowl, you're like, Joe, he's just running. Oh, he's running over Wisconsin guys. Wisconsin had a very good defense last year. And it's like there was a lot of criticism about him. And I said this during the Rose Bowl. And during the draft, I said Justin Herbert. I said I watch a lot of Oregon games because I cover the Ducks. And I watch a lot of Pac-12 football. And everybody watches SEC football. Everybody watches Big Ten football. I watch Pac-12 football and that stuff. And I said, I don't understand. He's a 4-point student in biology. He's big, strong, and mobile, and he's a good kid, and he got better every year at college. I'm like, I don't get the nitpicking. We did this with Andrew Luck. We're like, Andrew Luck's arm is good enough. It's a B-plus arm in the NFL. It's fine. It's like almost like we talked ourselves out of this kid. Holy moly. I mean, I just watched him last night. I was like, whoa. Doug Gottlieb Show, All Ball with Doug Gottlieb, the podcast now joining us, brought to you by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing. Are you a little surprised, Doug, that there was, like Anthony Lynn kind of pushed back, let's start with Tyrod, and then, they kept saying it's Tyrod's team. Like, I look at that and I think, man, what at practice didn't you see? Or were they just protecting the kid? What were they doing?
Well, there was no OTAs, remember?
Yeah.
Right? There wasn't all of the normal stuff after the NFL draft, Colin, had gone away. And if you remember, when Anthony Lynn was in Buffalo and they went to the playoffs for the first time in, I think, 13 years, Tyrod Taylor was his quarterback. So he had that was his rabbi in the room. That was the guy who believed in him. And he tried to have us believe that you don't lose your job to injury. But, Wally Pipp lost his job to injury and never got it back. And clearly, Justin Herbert is going to Wally Pipp Tyrod Taylor. That said, look, there were a couple of inaccurate throws, and that's, I think, the biggest question mark. You guys were talking about Josh Allen, and, we've all bought into this idea that you don't get more accurate at the higher level of football. That was what held people back from believing in Lamar Jackson. And it's still an issue at times with Lamar Jackson, especially outside the numbers. It's still an issue at times for Josh Allen, although they found a way to navigate it. And it's going to be the biggest issue, I think, for Justin Herbert. But Herbert was one of those guys that checked a bunch of boxes, but it was like one of those, this is, the old adage, if something's too good to be true, it probably is. I think that's what people thought.
Yeah.
I also think in this, I know it's two different offenses. I know two different coaching staffs, but there's some similarities there. I think Oregon's style, their tempo, the dink and dunk, a lot of screen passes in their offense. I think that covered up Marcus Mariota's flaws, and I think it covered up some of the immense amount of skill that Justin Herbert has, because he's way better than advertised at this point in his career. Doesn't mean top end he becomes better than Burrow or better than Tua, but as of right now, it is stunning how good he looks.
It is interesting and I was talking to a friend watching the games this weekend, and I'm like there's certain guys in this league, we know they're not super dynamic, and we know they're not bad. Matt Stafford, Matt Ryan. And you start watching them, and you're like, if I'm Atlanta, it's like, and I'm Detroit, it's like, I know they're talented, Doug, but the game's changing. You saw last night with Breeze, there's just you can't do certain things. And I said to myself, I was talking about Trevor Lawrence this weekend, and I'm like, I think there's 7 teams that wouldn't take him. Obviously, Kansas City, Seattle, Green Bay. I mean, we know who it is. I even think New England with Cam would say, we'll take him and just keep Cam for 2 years. But take Matt Ryan, for instance. He's been an MVP. If you could get Trevor Lawrence, would you take him with Matt Ryan if you're Atlanta?
Probably. I mean, or look, everyone has a value. Right? It's like when Khalil Mack was traded for 2 first-round picks, everybody said John Gruden, one, couldn't get 2 first-round picks. He did. And then, how can you give up on your team? Well, you look at what you can surround your quarterback with. So I do think that Matt Ryan still has an immense amount of skill. I mean, they had leads in all of these games to give away. Now, was he part of the offense that gave away the lead? Sure, but it was the defense that was completely dysfunctional and a team that just found ways to lose games they should rightfully win. So I'm not selling Matt Ryan right now. like others are. I think it just depends. What can you get from Matt Ryan? What can you get for Trevor Lawrence? You balance that out with who's the new GM, who's the new head coach, and how long their contract is. Because in the short term, Matt Ryan's going to win you a bunch more games. In the long term, having a rookie contract under a rookie deal and a chance to get something back from Matt Ryan in return obviously looks profitable in the future. But the idea that you're going to win right away with that team that has a bunch of holes to it. Look, Julio Jones isn't what he used to be. And everyone knows that Todd Gurley is, after the knee, some of the work ethic issues, he's going to have moments of greatness, but he's not a great long-term fit. That's a team that probably needs to start over, and starting over usually means the quarterback. But I think Matt Ryan still has a lot more good football left in him. The question becomes, it feels like it has to be a team in a dome because he's always had some arm strength issues.
I want to go to basketball. It's one of the things that really jumped out to me in the bubble is how much leadership mattered. Jimmy Butler, I had my questions, but I really felt like, wow, this kid's a real leader. He plays with young guys. I just really felt like my whole opinion of Jimmy Butler changed. And I watched a lot of these veteran teams, and there's a lot of great players in this league, Harden and Westbrook and Giannis and Paul George and Kawhi. But I looked at LeBron's leadership, and I mean, he's got kids, he's got a family, and he just pulled this thing, Doug. He just pulled it all together, and I thought, if leadership matters, and I think it does, LeBron's the best player in the league again next year, isn't he? He's the only guy that I think can make everything work, and I watched this bubble, and I'm like, I think leadership was 50% of the bubble beyond players.
Well, I would say that the two things to me that the bubble taught people who don't pay enough or give enough respect to the NBA is, one, leadership matters and coaching matters. Let's not kid ourselves. Frank Vogel and his staff did a marvelous job.
Yes.
Okay. It helps. It fixes everything when LeBron buys in, but he had to get LeBron to buy in. They had excellent game plans, and he helped execute them. Whatever was discussed in getting him on board, he didn't fight him on things. And when your star fights the coach, it ain't gonna work. So the first thing is coaching did matter. I thought it mattered for Miami. I thought it mattered for the Lakers. I thought those were two beautifully coached teams. But you're right in terms of leadership, but they're different. You know, LeBron was a little abrasive last year as a leader. This year, he was just constantly in the ear of Anthony Davis, and then Anthony Davis was his number two, and Anthony Davis then cleaned up some stuff in the locker room. And you know, look, there's a lot of interesting stories that I think will come out of the bubble. The Lakers weren't in great shape mentally, and then, you know, with what happened in Kenosha when the league took like 4 or 5 days off, they actually missed 2 games. That helped recharge them. And then their family showed up, and that helped recharge them. And then the Rockets were talking a little trash to them. That helped them. And then the Clippers lost, and then they were like, well, the hell with it. Now we're going to win this thing. We're already here. Let's just finish it off. So I think that LeBron's leadership, not just in what he said and how he carried himself, but how he respected his coach, but also the fact that he empowered Anthony Davis to then be his attaché, his number two. And so it wasn't just LeBron being a dictator in that locker room. The Heat, you got a bunch of young guys. And obviously Jimmy Butler finally found a group that will listen to him.
Right.
Butler can be, again, abrasive and a know-it-all and that old head who thinks he's seen and done everything, but it did work with this group. I think coaching and leadership was a huge part of the bubble.
You know, it's interesting. We were talking about this yesterday on the show that, you know, greatness just isn't talent. Like I've always said, you can say what you want about Jim Harbaugh, but it's not just that he made Michigan better. San Francisco, the Niners were a wreck when he left. Like, what happens when you leave? And as great as Jordan is, North Carolina was great when Jordan left. And by the way, the Bulls were fine when Jordan left. They went 57-55. But LeBron's teams are terrible when he leaves. They're horrible. They like get the number 1 pick. Could I just argue this? Forget talent. As a foundational pick, LeBron makes,
how are we doing?
He makes everything work.
He makes everything better. He's an all-time great player. Let's not do the Jordan. When Jordan left the Bulls the second time, they were an abject disaster. Now everybody else left as well. Okay, when LeBron left Miami, one of the reasons that they sank so far down was Chris Bosh had blood clots, right? If Chris Bosh comes back with that gigantic contract, they're still a playoff team without him. You know, the first time LeBron left Cleveland, they had won 61 games. They did. They had gone all in. Remember, they got Shaq and Anton Jameson. They tried to throw everything to make it work, and then they tore it all down. They fired their coach. They tore it all down. So I think context does matter. But I heard your foundational piece. If that's true, then why wasn't their foundation better last year? I think it takes the right mix. I think that these things take usually a year to marinate. I mean, the truth is that even when he got to Miami the first time, it wasn't perfect that first year, and they had to figure out the point guard situation. They jettisoned Mike Bibby. They moved Chris Bosh essentially to center, and then they acquired Ray Allen, and the rest is, in fact, history, right? So I think we have to understand that the Clippers are going to be real next year. The Warriors are going to be real next year. The Nets are going to be real next year. Boston should only get better. I think Milwaukee, as long as Giannis stays, I think they'll be right there. I think it's going to be an unbelievable year. LeBron and what he's done, to me, was my MVP because of where this team was at the end of last year. Magic quits. They couldn't pull off the trade. People didn't want to deal with Pelinka. That's what everybody said. Ty Lue's the only coach. Ty Lue turned down the job. And you look at now, they were the best defensive team, clearly the best team in the NBA. Whatever the road they had to go through isn't their fault. But if you want to do the whole what happened when they left, when Jordan left the Bulls the second time, they've literally never recovered. Never recovered except for the year where they were the 1 seed with Derrick Rose. So I think he's great. I think he makes everybody better. That's the true sign of a great player. But it takes a while to learn how to play and function with LeBron James, especially this version of LeBron James, who's not as athletic as he used to be defensively, but he uses his brain at a 50 times rate of most NBA players to get everybody else to do the things that he used to be able to do.
The Duggar show after ours on Fox Sports Radio. We're having steaks tonight, Doug and I, and watching some.
Am I cooking? Because
No.
I heard you don't know your way around. You're cooking?
I'm like Bobby Flay with a microphone. You're not. I'll be cooking. I'll be doing all the cooking. Very talented. Doug Gottlieb, good stuff. Coming up next, I want to end the MVP debate. Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. Let's just stop it. Let's not get into it. There's certain times I don't even want to engage in conversations, so I'm going to stop everybody else from talking about it with a little context on why it's not a competition. It's like Burger King to McDonald's. You can be two, but it ain't close to one. That's coming up. Smart grill technology. That's what RecTech grills offer. You can start a RecTech grill with your phone. You can know the temperature inside the meat, the chops, the ground beef, the steaks, the salmon on your phone. You can monitor all your cooking on your phone with RecTech grills. How good's this? Built by grillers for grillers. Buy one, buy right. You'll never own another grill. 6-year warranty. Reviews speak for themselves. Wi-Fi capable. Turn the grill up, down, on, off with your phone. Stainless steel build. These things are built to last. Sign up for their newsletter. RecTech.com. RecTeq.com. You will never have to buy another grill the rest of your life. 4 temperature readings on your controller or your phone. You're having a cocktail. You're having a cold one. It's doing the grilling. You can just sit there and don't have to run back and forth to the grill. RecTech grills.